The 1980s unleashed a tidal wave of exploitation cinema that shattered every rule in the book, serving up gore and depravity so extreme it provoked outright bans around the globe. From blood-drenched jungle horrors to mind-bending tales of human madness, these films dared to go where no studio would follow. Tonight, we're uncovering the top 20 insane 1980s exploitation movies that got banned, revealing the shocking scenes and sordid backstories that landed them on censorship blacklists. If you're ready to explore cinema's most forbidden nightmares, smash that subscribe button and ring the bell to join us on this uncensored journey. Cannibal Holocaust. Ruggero Deodato's Cannibal. Holocaust begins as a seemingly straightforward rescue mission into the Amazon rainforest, but it swiftly descends into one of the most shocking horror experiences ever committed to film. When a documentary crew goes missing while filming Savage Tribes, a second expedition retrieves their camera reels, and what plays back is pure terror. Viewers witness brutal rituals, graphic executions, and genuine animal slaughters, so convincing that Italian authorities charged Deodato with murder until he produced the actors in court to prove they were unharmed. In Britain, it was slapped onto the Director of Public Prosecution's Video Nasties list, triggering police raids under the Obscene Publications Act and an outright ban that wouldn't lift for years. Australia, Brazil, New Zealand, and several other countries also prohibited it, citing scenes of rape, dismemberment, and bestiality. Beneath its hyper-violent veneer, the film mounts a fierce critique of exploitative journalism, suggesting that the Western crew is more barbaric than the tribe they condemn. Its found-footage style prefigured modern horror hits like The Blair Witch Project, proving that raw realism can outdo even the most elaborate special effects. Decades later, uncut restorations have surfaced, but Cannibal Holocaust remains a lightning rod in debates over censorship, animal ethics, and the limits of cinematic transgression. Cannibal Ferox. Tagged in some markets as the most brutal film ever made, Umberto Lenzi's Cannibal Ferox takes the tropes of Cannibal Holocaust and amplifies them into borderline unwatchable territory. Three American anthropology students seeking authentic tribal experiences get more than they bargained for when they disturb an isolated South American tribe's rituals. Lenzi spares no detail. Victims are impaled, necks are crushed, and animal cruelty scenes are left uncut. The lurid poster art, blood-soaked bodies draped over totemic skulls, became synonymous with exploitation cinema at its lowest. UK censors classified it as a Section 2 video nasty, leading to prosecutions under the Obscene Publications Act, while Germany and Australia imposed lifetime bans. Italian courts demanded extensive cuts before any domestic release. Critics at the time dismissed it as misogynistic shock porn, but fans argue its relentless pace and practical effects capture a nihilistic vision of civilization's thin veneer. Even today, die-hard collectors circulate unofficial VHS transfers that preserve Lenzi's original vision, a testament to Cannibal Ferox's enduring cult status and its unapologetic assault on the senses. Cannibal Apocalypse. Cannibal Apocalypse blends World War II trauma with jungle carnage. Following Vietnam, vet Eddie who returns home only to unleash gruesome, cannibalistic urges. Director Antonio Margheriti stages macabre set pieces, returned from the grave comrades attacking with gnashing teeth, limbs torn apart in visceral close-ups that landed it squarely on the UK's original DPP video nasty list. Italy slapped an X rating on its big screen run, and the BBFC refused classification until 2005 after over 2 minutes of animal cruelty scenes were excised. Even daytime television in Switzerland banned it outright. Beneath the grotesque violence, the film metaphorically links the horrors of war to ritualistic bloodlust, suggesting that true monsters lurk within returning soldiers' psyches. While lesser known than its cannibal cousins, Cannibal Apocalypse remains a stark time capsule of post-70s exploitation, proving that bloody spectacle and social commentary can coexist in a single, savage package. Anthropophagus. The Grim Reaper. Joe D'Amato's Anthropophagus unfurls on a remote Aegean island where a resurrected cannibal stalks vacationers one by one. the film's infamous fetus bite sequence, where the killer tears a fetus from its mother's womb and bites into it, became the linchpin of its prosecution in the UK, earning it a spot among the nastiest video nasties of the early 80s. The BBFC demanded multiple cuts before any limited UK release, and many other territories outright banned it for obscenity and graphic violence. D'Amato's lurid chiaroscuro lighting and Paul's eerie ambient score heighten the sense of inescapable dread, while practical gore effects, crushing rib cages, severed limbs, dripping viscera, leave little to the imagination. Though critics called it pointless shock value, horror aficionados praise its cast of maroon tourists, each dispatched in increasingly creative ways. Decades later, Anthropophagus resurfaces at midnight film fests, a grim reminder that grappling with taboos can come at the cost of mainstream acceptance. Contamination. Spanish-Italian director Luigi Cozzi's Contamination masquerades as sci-fi, but quickly devolves into protracted gore. Astronaut remains infected by giant space insects capture American townsfolk in a nest-like hive, which bursts open to reveal human bodies riddled with larvae. The BBFC refused its video release until 2004, after 2 minutes of visceral insect gore sequences were excised, and dubbed it a sequel to Alien for its unabashed body horror echoes. Australia and West Germany also banned it, citing graphic depictions of entrails crawling with maggots. Cozzi's use of imaginative practical effects, face-melting plasma, babies born bite-ridden, pushes the uncanny into the grotesque, while the film's ham-fisted social allegory is overshadowed by its stomach-turning imagery. Today, Contamination thrives in cult circles, with uncut European VHS editions fetching high prices among collectors, seeking the full, unflinching nightmare Cozzi unleashed on unsuspecting dinner parties. The New York Ripper. Lucio Fulci's The New York Ripper plunges viewers into a chilling cat-and-mouse game across Manhattan's most sordid streets. When a deranged killer dubbed the Ripper begins targeting women with a razor-sharp blade, Detective Fred Williams races against time to unravel clues hidden in cryptic voicemails. Fulci spares no mercy. Victims are slashed in brutal close-ups, blood splatters blur half-lit alleyways, and an atmosphere of unrelenting dread saturates every frame. British censors deemed it gruesome, misogynistic violence, and slapped it on the video nasties list, triggering police seizures under the Obscene Publications Act. Germany and Australia followed suit, banning it for indecent brutality and sensational cruelty. Even a censored VHS release in Italy required surgical cuts to scenes of facial mutilation and throat slitting. Despite, or because of, its infamy, the New York Ripper cemented Fulci's reputation as the godfather of gore, inspiring future slasher films with its shocking practical effects and dissonant synth score. Beneath its exploitation veneer lies a grim portrait of urban decay and unchecked male aggression, making it more than mere shock porn. It's a barbed critique of a city where evil can hide behind neon lights and subway shadows. This vicious portrait of violence ensured its exile from mainstream shelves for over a decade. Pieces. Eloy de la Iglesia's Pieces begins with a chilling prologue, a young girl assembling a jigsaw puzzle from human bones. Fast forward to Boston, where college students fall prey to an unseen butcher who stalks sorority halls with a meat cleaver. De la Iglesia orchestrates each kill like a gruesome ballet. Throats are sliced, bodies dismembered, and gore splattered across pristine dorm corridors. The BBFC in the UK branded it sadistic, misogynistic slaughter and refused classification until 2003, while Germany and Australia classified it unfit for public viewing until the mid-90s. What makes Pieces uniquely unsettling is its contrast of sunny campuses and textbook innocence with horrific carnage lurking just beyond the library doors. Its low budget only heightens the shock. Practical effects look all too real as limbs cascade into the camera. Critics dismissed it as exploitation trash, but fans argue that the film's relentless pacing and blood-soaked set pieces crystallize the essence of 80s slasher mania. By turning everyday settings into killing fields, Pieces defined a subgenre of campus terror and secured its cult status among horror collectors, remaining banned or heavily cut in many territories well into the 21st century. Nightmares in a Damaged Brain. Also known as Nightmare, this under-the-radar shocker from indie director Sverrir Haugen thrusts audiences into the fractured mind of Ken, a young man recently released from a mental institution. Ken awakens from a haze to discover he may have murdered his mother, and his hallucinations are as violent as his possible crimes. The film's relentless POV sequences shove viewers into Ken's blood-spattered vision. Decapitations, throat slashes, and impromptu autopsies play out with bone-crushing realism. In Britain, the DPP list labeled it a video nasty, prompting police raids and prosecutions. Australia banned it outright, while Canada demanded heavy cuts to scenes of surgical gore. Nightmares in a Damaged Brain didn't clog the box office, but its low-fidelity violence resonated with horror aficionados seeking raw shock over polished productions. The grainy 16mm photography only accentuates the film's nightmarish quality, making each kill a claustrophobic descent into psychosis. Beneath the exploitation surface, the film interrogates the fragility of sanity and the ease with which violent impulses can take hold, leaving a legacy as one of the most viscerally disturbing portraits of a killer's mind ever committed to celluloid. Men Behind the Sun. Touted as the film too shocking to ever exist, T.F. Mouse's Men Behind the Sun recreates the horrors of Japan's Unit 731 during World War II. Ostensibly a historical docudrama, it depicts actual human experiments, frostbite testing, plague injections, vivisections, conducted on Chinese prisoners, so graphic and unflinching that child actors reportedly fainted on set. It was condemned as inhuman exploitation and banned in over 20 countries, including the UK, Australia, and Germany. Even Hong Kong and Taiwan censored it for disturbing realism and glorifying atrocity. While defenders argue it raises essential historical awareness, critics blasted it as sensational propaganda that numbs viewers with unrelenting cruelty. The film's stark digital grain and handheld camera work strip away cinematic distance, forcing audiences into the same gas chambers and lab rooms as the victims. No orchestral score softens the impact, only ominous silence and the screams of the condemned. Though finally available uncut in some markets, Men Behind the Sun remains a lightning rod for debates on ethics in filmmaking and the line between bearing witness and exploitative spectacle. Death Warmed Up. New Zealand's answer to Italian cannibal cinema, David Blythe's Death Warmed Up, follows Michael, a Vietnam veteran turned mortician who returns home to clear his sister's name after she's accused of murder. But when a sadistic professor tortures her in a secret island lab, Michael snaps, donning a gas mask and going on a gore-soaked killing spree. From crushed skulls to impaled bodies, each murder is staged like a gruesome art installation. The BBFC branded it extreme violence and refused classification until 2006, while Australian censors cut every frame, showing animal cruelty and bone-shattering effects. Despite its exploitation roots, the film embeds a critique of war-induced trauma, suggesting that society's brutal experiments can create monsters as horrifying as those they seek to understand. The dank swamp sets and murky film stock add to the sense of decay, both moral and physical. Although small-scale on release, Death Warmed Up earned a cult following among gore hounds who prized its inventive kills and bleak commentary on science gone awry, ensuring its reputation as one of the 80s most savage underground horrors. The House on the Edge of the Park. Lucio Fulci's The House on the Edge of the Park opens like a glamorous Manhattan thriller. Elegant hosts greet two strangers they believe to be charming party crashers. But when the guests reveal themselves as escaped convicts, the night spirals into a horrific game of cat and mouse. Fulci stages scenes of savage brutality, broken bottles pressed against throats, sexual humiliation in dimly lit hallways, and climactic sequences of bludgeoning and dismemberment. In Britain, the BBFC branded it obscene and violently degrading, and it landed on the infamous Video Nasties list, prompting police seizures under the Obscene Publications Act, and an outright video ban that wasn't lifted until 2007. Australia and Germany followed suit, outlawing any uncut release for over 2 decades. Italian censors demanded extensive cuts to sexual violence before granting a limited theatrical run. Beneath the surface shock, the film probes class tensions. Privileged elites forced to confront the fury of those they exploit. Fulci's disorienting camera angles and screeching synth score make each act of cruelty feel uncomfortably close, ensuring audiences can never settle into the safety of just a movie. Its lasting impact lies in how it merges social critique with relentless gore, a fusion so unsettling that many countries refuse to let it be seen in its original form. I Spit on Your Grave. Mir Zarchi's I Spit on Your Grave tells the story of Jennifer, a writer who retreats to a remote cottage for solitude, and encounters 4 local men who subject her to unspeakable violence. The film spares no detail. Long takes of assault, explicit nudity, and a final revenge sequence featuring brutal mutilations. From its New York debut, critics decried it as pornographic exploitation and hate-driven. The UK and Ireland banned it outright, citing excessive sexual violence, and Australia refused classification until 2003. Finland and Germany also prohibited any release, while several U.S. states impounded prints under obscenity laws. Defenders argue it is a feminist revenge fantasy that critiques victimization, but many saw only lurid spectacle. Its grainy cinematography and minimal soundtrack force viewers to confront the horror without distraction. Even today, discussions around the film focus less on its narrative and more on its willingness to depict violence against women in graphic detail. Whether interpreted as empowerment or exploitation, I Spit on Your Grave reshaped the boundaries of on-screen brutality, so much so that numerous territories deemed it unfit for any audience for decades. Maniac. William Lustig's Maniac follows Frank, a New York recluse driven insane by childhood trauma, as he prowls the city at night, murdering and scalping women to add to his gruesome mannequin collection. Shot largely in POV, the film forces viewers into the killer's handheld perspective, blades slicing through flesh, scalpel gleaming in close-up, and cries of terror echoing off empty streets. The BBFC condemned it as one of the most violent and disturbing films ever passed, banning video release until 2001. Germany and Australia similarly refused classification, while France demanded the removal of the scalping scenes. Critics at Cannes walked out, calling it psychopathic pornography, yet horror fans laud its raw intensity and Joe Spinell's unnerving performance. Lustig's unflinching practical effects, skin peeling from bone, blood pooling on cracked sidewalks, leave little to the imagination. Beneath the gore, the film probes the hollowness of consumer culture. Frank's fetishization of mannequins mirrors society's obsession with surfaces. By combining arthouse POV with back-alley brutality, Maniac transcends standard slasher fare, but its unrelenting violence kept it locked away from mainstream audiences for decades. The Evil Dead. Sam Raimi's The Evil Dead seems innocent at first. 5 college friends head to an isolated cabin for a weekend retreat, but when they unleash a demonic force through a mysterious book, playful fun turns into grisly survival horror. Characters are pinned to walls by tree branches, their flesh ripped and contorted. Possessed friends lurch through corridors with bloodshot eyes, and Raimi's inventive camera work, low-angle crane shots and rapid zooms, immerses you in the terror. The UK's Video Recordings Act inspectors labeled it shamelessly violent, banning it on home video until 2001. Australia demanded cuts to scenes of nail-driven hands and throat slashes before granting classification in 2005. Even parts of the U.S. saw regional seizures under obscenity statutes. What set The Evil Dead apart was its combination of slapstick energy and gut-wrenching violence, suggesting that terror can be both horrifying and darkly humorous. Its unvarnished practical gore established a template for countless imitators and cemented Raimi's reputation as a visionary director. Though now celebrated as a horror classic, its initial exile underscores how boundary-pushing effects can provoke censorship as fervently as any moral panic. The Beyond. Known in Italy as L'Aldilà, Lucio Fulci's The Beyond centers on a New Orleans hotel built over one of the 7 gates of hell. As supernatural forces seep through the walls, Guests are subjected to eye gouging, a tar-like ooze consuming flesh, and a rat-infested well that drags victims to their doom. The BBFC placed it on the video nasties list for scenes of extreme violence and grotesque imagery, refusing classification until 2003. Australia and Germany followed with outright bans, while France cut nearly 4 minutes of the infamous eye socket sequence. Fulci's dreamlike pacing, long corridor shots dissolving into sudden eruptions of gore, keeps viewers unbalanced, as if reality itself is dissolving. A haunting score by Fabio Frizzi adds to the sense of cosmic dread. Beneath its bloody surface, the film meditates on the thin barrier between life and death, and the horrors that lie beyond our understanding. Even today, fans seek out uncut editions to experience the full impact of Fulci's vision, one where madness and mutilation converge in a nightmarish tapestry rarely equaled on film. Necromantik, Jörg Buttgereit's underground shocker. Necromantik follows a couple drawn into a macabre love affair with the dead, stealing a corpse for erotic thrills until desire becomes obsession. Shot on Super 8 film with minimal budget, its infamous necrophilia scenes forced authorities in Australia, Finland, Iceland, Malaysia, Singapore, and parts of Canada to ban it outright, labeling it inhuman exploitation beyond any cinematic boundary. In Europe, it was suppressed by multiple boards for graphic sexual violence and corpse desecration, remaining unavailable on home video in the UK until Arrow Films' uncut 18 certificate release in 2014. Audiences who managed to find bootlegged VHS tapes described the visuals as simultaneously lurid and strangely poetic. Lovers entwined in shrouds, decaying flesh reframed as some dark art. Underneath the taboo content, Buttgereit weaves a melancholic meditation on grief, loneliness, and the lengths to which broken hearts will go to reclaim what death has taken. His deliberate pacing and haunting synth score transform what could have been mere shock porn into a transgressive cult poem, so unsettling that decades later, it still ignites fierce debates on whether art can justify its horrors. Violent shit. Germany's first direct-to-video gore film, Andreas Schnass's Violent Shit, was an amateurish bloodbath shot in 4 grueling weekends, but it was so unapologetically splattered with dismemberment, impalements, and bone-crunching effects that the West German government banned it immediately upon release. No national board would certify its raw footage of Karl the Butcher carving a path of carnage across the countryside, and all official distribution was halted under the rationale of extreme violence. Schnass embraced his infamy, re-editing and self-distributing underground copies that fueled a cult following. Fans traded camcorder transfers at midnight screenings, marveling at its DIY gore effects. Heads cleaved like melons, rivers of blood gushing from shattered skulls, and Karl's unhinged laughter echoing over grainy footage. To this day, Violent Shit embodies the raw spirit of unfiltered exploitation, proof that a film can be so primitive and vicious that authorities see no recourse but to bury it. Its legend endures among gore hounds who cherish its unapologetic brutality and the perverse creativity that defied every censorship board in its path. The Exterminatory. James Glickenhaus's vigilante thriller, The Exterminator centers on John Eastland, a Vietnam vet who channels wartime trauma into brutal revenge against New York's criminal underworld. From improvised garrote kills to zip-cuffed confrontations in sleazy dive bars, its on-screen violence verges on the surreal, and the Commonwealth censor in Australia refused to register it for home video in December 1980, citing excessive violence unfit for public consumption. The UK's Video Recordings Act later forced its removal from shelves, and the British Board of Film Classification wouldn't grant a video certificate for years. Even in the US, several regional courts impounded prints under obscenity statutes. What set The Exterminator apart was its gleeful immersion in graphic detail, entrails spilling from collapsed walls, severed fingers used as calling cards, and Eastland's steely gaze as each skull cracked. Beneath its surface, the film interrogates vigilante justice and the psychological scars of war, suggesting that violence begets violence in an endless cycle. its contested legacy remains a testament to how far exploitation cinema can stretch before crossing the line into outright censorship. Cannibal Ferox. Umberto Lenzi's Cannibal Ferox was marketed as the most violent film ever made, and its dismemberments, decapitations, and live animal slaughters earned it a Guinness World Record nod for being among the most banned movies of all time. Upon release, censorship boards across 31 countries, from the UK's Video Nasties prosecutions to Australia's lifetime ban, condemned its impalements, tribal rituals, and graphic wildlife killings. The BBFC prosecuted it under the Obscene Publications Act, demanding cuts to scenes where victims are skewered and brains consumed. In Italy, courts forced Lenzi to remove animal cruelty shots before any theatrical run. Yet, these bans only fanned its cult status. Uncut bootlegs circulated in midnight screenings, and fan publications dissected every grisly practical effect: hook impalement, spinal fractures, and visceral tribal feasts. At its core, Cannibal Ferox doubles as a savage critique of Western interference, portraying anthropology students whose anthropological curiosity unleashes a far more brutal form of colonization. Its blend of social commentary and unrelenting gore cements its place as a cornerstone of 1980s exploitation, and a film so extreme that global authorities felt compelled to bury it. UB Cannibal Terror, also known as Terreur Cannibale, Alain Payet's Cannibal Terror, follows tourists who stumble into a hidden Indonesian village, only to be enslaved, dissected, and offered as dinner in grisly banquet scenes. While it never matched its peers' budgets, its raw depictions of human flesh being carved and chewed landed it on the UK's infamous Video Nasties list, alongside Cannibal Holocaust and Cannibal Ferox. The British Board of Film Classification seized its tapes under the Obscene Publications Act, and Germany's FSK banned it for depicting violence in a realistic and unsoftened manner. Italian release prints were truncated to remove the most explicit dismemberments, and Australia refused classification until 25 years later. Fans who hunted down rare VHS imports describe stomach-churning sequences, the camera lingering on skull-splitting blows, and villagers feasting on still-warm organs. Despite its obscurity, Cannibal Terror encapsulates the era's exploitative spirit, a low-budget shocker so unhinged that mainstream censors worldwide agreed it should never be seen uncut. Its legacy survives through grainy underground copies, a testament to the potent allure and taboo power of 1980s exploitation cinema.